Houston, we have a problem. Well, I've always had problems with this back cylinder. You can see it's the pump side or the PTO side. It was always the one that was running a little cooler by touch, and the spark plug was fouled, and one thing and another. And so I said, well, I better take a look. Well, I looked down the spark plug hole, and you see right there in the middle, and it looked all right. But I thought, no, I'll just go ahead and rip the head off of it. Well, I ripped the head off of it and saw that. I said, uh-oh. So you can see where it's all beat up, and I'm sure that's just metal that's gone inside the cylinder there, and it was just beaten back and forth and around, and you can see where the metal is. I think what caused all these dents in the piston in the head was a broken ring. There's just a ring that's just gone, part of it right there to there. So I'm pretty sure it was a ring that let loose, then everything else went after that. Anyway, so the cylinder itself is pretty bad. I don't think I'll be able to use it, not with a standard bore. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, it's right here. It's right here on this side. Right in there. It's really rough. So, you know, the cylinder's probably not going to work for a standard bore piston. It might be able to be bored out and use it. So I won't throw it away. I'll hang on to it. But in the meantime, what I've done is I found a cylinder, piston, head, wrist pin, retainers, and rod end bearing for the wrist pin. And I picked it up pretty cheap, and we'll just try that. It looked to be like a pretty good used set, so we'll give it a go and see what it does, and make sure everything's okay. And then maybe later I'll probably tear her down and put all new pistons and everything in it. But I want to make sure everything's fine first. Besides that, you saw the video. It ran great. Well, no, it didn't run great. It ran 2 cylinders great. And I still pulled 35 mile an hour. Downstream about 31, 32 mile an hour going upstream. But with 2 people in it, of course it was my son in the front seat there, and he only weighs 100 pounds, and me in the back, and it pulled us along pretty good. I'm thinking that if we ever get all 3 cylinders running on this thing, I don't know, 45 maybe? That's a guess. We'll just have to wait and see. It might even be more. But it's still plenty. I mean, we'll never use that speed on the river. Very rarely will we use the speed on the river. More or less, it's just over a plane running, you know, 20, 25 miles an hour is where we usually run on the river, just because there's a lot of obstacles. We don't have gravel bars or sand bars. We have rocks and boulders, so we have to be very careful. You can see my paint job. My son decided to paint it up so it looked halfway decent. He just used some rattle cans we had laying around. You can see the boat's actually kind of way up high in the front because I put it on. I don't know if you can see that. There's a hoist up there. There you go. You can see it better. That's for hanging deer on. But I hooked it to the trailer and tipped it up just to make it easier to work on the motor. It's lower back here. Cavitation, it seemed to be a lot better once I got rid of those front bars. And let me see if I can show you a picture of that. There it is right there. You can see there's a couple bolt heads underneath that caulking there, but right there is where I cut it off, and so it is to the side of the intake and the spoon. So that's what I've got on there. It's not very pretty, but it's you know, it's test phase. Like I said, eventually this is all going to be fiberglassed. But no, very little cavitation. Of course, I really didn't get it running long enough to be able to see what I had to work with. But it ran better in a straight line than it did before. But we're getting there. We'll keep plugging away. I'll get this, get these problems fixed here, and it'll probably be a week before I get the parts. But when I get them in, I'll throw them together and we'll run her again. You know, when I bought this jet ski, the guy said it lost power and it wasn't running right. And in the middle cylinder, actually, you could feel down through the hole, the carburetors were off, you could feel that there was a reed. There's 6 reeds on each cylinder, and one reed was missing. So I thought, well, that's an easy fix. It's just a reed. Well, it wasn't only a reed. That cylinder was bad when I got it. I mean, I've only got maybe 10 minutes of runtime on this since I bought it. So that cylinder was bad when I bought it. You know, sometimes you just have to roll the dice. I bought it really, really cheap, and this time it didn't pay off, but it's still, I'm going to be into it real cheap. Even with the new piston, cylinder, head, all the parts, it's still not going to be that much. Carburetors. I pulled the carburetors off. Some guys were saying, oh, rebuild them, rebuild them. Well, you know what? Right underneath the diaphragm right here, on each of these, there was just a little bit of grit, and that's what I initially saw. And I pulled them apart, and I went ahead and ripped them all apart, clear down, and there was nothing. They were clean. The screens were clean. The jets were clean. They weren't damaged. There wasn't any problems with them. So I just cleaned them up, put them back together. The diaphragms were fine. They just had a little, it was like a dust grit that was sitting in there. I'm thinking that this jet ski sat for a couple years when I bought it. So anyway, so we know the carburetors are fine now. They're all cleaned out. I put the high speed and the low speed jets back to factory specs, and then we'll adjust from there. I'm about 2,300 feet above sea level, so it might take a little bit of adjustment, but that's where I'm sitting. I haven't done anything else. You can see we're still sitting on the 2x4, which I really wish I could get that motor fixed, because that 2x4 is starting to get fairly uncomfortable. But I might start, in the meantime, I have a week off. I might start working on a little bit of the decking. I mean, not a week off, a week before the parts get here. So I might start working on some of the decking and getting that situated. You can see that I got rid of the fuel selector valve. You just have one line that comes in and one line that goes out. I still have the vent on there. This one I capped off. That was the reserve. But I simplified it. I got rid of the reserve, the fuel select valve, and now I have a lot less hoses, and it just works. It's a lot more simple in my mind. Put a new fuel filter on it, and yeah, fuel delivery seems to be fine. Spark's fine. Everything's fine. It was a bad piston. So I will get that fixed and make a new video when we get that. In the meantime, you guys all take care. God bless, and I will post this up on Tin Boats, of course, so everybody can see it. Thank you. Bye.